Thank you very much.
Attendance, what happened? No class before this.
No.
So, can I see group 1? Anyone from group 1? Only one. Group 2? Group 3? No one from group 3. Group 4? Good. Group 3, no one. Some tutors use their own laptop, they unplug everything.
And
Okay, student attendance 913774. Correct. So let's look at the task for today. I will brief you on the task to be done for this week and then I will check your work, okay? So today I'm going to check on your elicitation techniques. Okay, so I guess stakeholder no issue, right? You have to describe each factor that you have chosen, then identify the stakeholders for each factor. Okay, is there any limit for the number of stakeholders? No. The more you analyze, the better your marks will be. If when I look at your title and I find like some important stakeholders are not there, missing, that will affect your marks. So you have to make sure that you analyze, okay, all the possible stakeholders for each factor. Okay, for each factor. So number of factors, how to know how many factors to choose? Same as the number of members. If you have 4 members in your team, minimum 4 factors. 5 members, minimum 5 factors. Okay. Okay. Now let's look at the task given today. Or will be given today. Okay. First class for the day. This is 3, week 3 or week 4? Week 4. I don't even realize it's already week 4. So by that, today, okay, response time, long. Okay, requirement elicitation technique, week 2, week 3, and then 4 is requirement analysis approach and UML class diagram. Okay, so today I have to brief you on requirement analysis approach and class diagram. So what I'm going to do is analysis approach I put on hold. I will discuss next week because my lecture pending one more part to cover the analysis approach. When I complete chapter 3 lecture, you will understand how to explain the analysis approach. Okay? But now just to brief you, what are the analysis approach you have? Okay? You have a few ways. So you can go for actually, what do you call that, methodology. Methodology based approach. Methodology. Okay. So there are 2 actually. One is structure based. Structure based. The other one is OOP, object oriented analysis. Not OOP, OOP. Sorry. Okay, object oriented analysis. So you know, right? Under object oriented analysis comes all your UML diagrams. So how you actually come up with the requirement analysis? You start identifying all the objects in your system. So first you analyze the objects. This is just to give you some idea. Okay, analyze the objects. By analyzing the objects, you can identify all the classes. So you draw your class diagram first. After you draw the class diagram, what do you do? Okay, you identify all the requirements. Okay, involve these objects. So here comes all your use case. Okay, analyze all the user interactions. Okay, user interactions. So here comes your interactions. Okay, so first you will draw your class diagram. After you draw your class diagram, you will every object they have their own interaction with the system. Correct or not? So you will try to how they interact with the users or with the other objects. So that is actually user interactions. So what happens now? You will draw your use case diagram here. Then for every object, you will analyze the behavior. Analyze the behavior for every object. Behaviors for every object. Every object. This will give you the state chart diagram and also the sequence diagram. So this is how usually you use this approach. You use object-oriented analysis approach to identify all the requirements and their details. So this is one method. What is structured based? Structured based, all the programming language before C++. How do you analyze the requirement for structured based? Anyone? How do you come up with the requirements for structured based? They are different. Object-oriented based on objects. We identify the object first of all when we want to develop a system, design and develop a system. So that's why you see we start always with a class diagram. So the first diagram to draw for a project is class diagram. Because in class you are identifying, analyzing each and every object, each and every class. So when you know all the classes, what do? You try to go and look at every class or object in detail. What are the attributes? What are the properties? Okay? What are the methods or operations? Then you try to find the relationship between the classes. After you do complete this, now you know all the classes roughly for the system. So based on the classes, you can identify the interaction with users. You can go and identify the behavior of each class or each object. So that's how slowly we develop the requirement. Okay? But what is structure based? This is another approach. This approach is before OOA, old method. Okay? Then we have one more totally different. This is method based. Methodology is method based. The other approach is viewpoint based. Viewpoint oriented analysis. So here what you do? You identify all the stakeholders or viewpoints. We call viewpoints. Viewpoints. So what are the viewpoints we have? 3 categories. Who can recall that from what you have learned before? What are the 3 categories of viewpoints? Interactive or interactor? Interactor. One more? External. External. We call external. Correct, right? Interactor, external. Yeah, correct. The meaning is correct, but the word is correct. External. Okay? Which is indirect. Indirect. And last one is domain based. Okay? Interactor, external, and domain. So by doing this, right, what you do, you go and identify all the important interactors, external and also domain viewpoints, and then from that viewpoint you try to collect the requirement. This is totally different approach. It's not method based. This is stakeholder based or viewpoint based. Okay, so we have 2 different approach. So now tell me, if you choose method based, if you are using a method based, I call method based. This one viewpoint oriented, this one method oriented. Okay, if you go for method oriented, right? Okay, method oriented, you go for structure based or OOA. Which one? You have to tell me which one you go. Which one most suitable for your project? Why I didn't even discuss about method based. Here structure based, all your DFD, okay, context diagram, ERD, all this method based diagrams. Okay. So So why I didn't even mention about method based? Structured based. Anyone? Yeah, and I'm very sure most of you are going to propose a development which involves object-oriented environment ready, Java, mobile application, or even web-based. Also nowadays, I see most of you more to object-oriented. If you come still continue with this, consider kind of outdated. No one now really go for this nowadays. Okay, so very obvious you guys are now developing object-oriented because everything is object-oriented already. Okay, so this one I don't waste my time, but I got teach you this, right? I got teach you, but then I didn't explain much on this, but I focus on this because now mostly object-oriented. Even exam also, I'm not going to ask you to draw DFT. I may have questions, but my questions will be like, very little marks to test your knowledge on this. But I don't really ask you to draw the diagram for my course. I focus on this. I emphasize on this. Okay. So now this one. Okay. And then this one. This is also this is an approach you can use for any project anytime. Viewpoint, because we are very depending on the stakeholders. So requirement always comes from stakeholders. Why? So you don't want to analyze yourself. Okay. This is analysis based approach. You can go and try to approach the stakeholders and collect requirement from them. So now, for this part, requirement analysis approach, you have to choose between this or this. No worries, no extra mark or less marks for any approach. It is depend on you how are you explaining. It is depending on you how well you explain, how well you analyze. Okay. So for example, let's look at the question. Okay, so you are almost done with the part 1. So part 2 first task, we are stepping into part 2 first task. Discuss which requirement analysis approach that would be adopted for your team project, for the project. Okay, explain the suggested approach and justify your suggestion. So basically, explain how you implement. Explain the implementation, how you carry out the technique to collect requirement, to analyze the requirement. So implementation. Okay, justify why you choose this one. Justify why this approach. Okay, why choosing this approach. So now, how many choices you have? You can actually ignore this between this two. Either you go for viewpoint oriented analysis or you go for OOA analysis, object oriented analysis. So explain how you carry out object oriented analysis and justify why this approach. Okay? For your information, you really don't know how to explain. I have briefly tell you how to do, but still don't understand. Wait for my lecture next week, the final part of chapter 3. I'm going to have a few minutes on the last slide explaining this one to you. So after that, I guess you can understand. I will point out this is how you explain for the assignment. So if you want to go for this, but if you want to go for that, I'm not going to spend any more time. It's in my slide also. But I will go through very quickly because we already done this in software engineering. Fine? So we will go through, but still in my lecture notes, I will go through quickly. Okay? So use this to explain this two. So more or less one page explanation for this. Enough. If viewpoint oriented analysis, have to give me the diagram. At the end, draw the diagram as an evidence. This one, you're going to draw the diagram somehow, so you don't have to give me any diagram specifically, but when you explain, try to have some examples. All this explanation, right? I want examples. Because you're not going to give me diagrams here, but somehow the next class you're going to give me the diagrams. Okay? So try to tell me which diagram or which approach you will choose. Okay, that's the task for this week. In here, practical. Okay, practical task for this week is this one. Clear? Can start writing. Can improve after next week lecture. So next week lecture, I'm going to show you how to explain. Okay. Okay. Now report. SRS. SRS also I give you one task. Okay. SRS. Yeah. Have you started with your part 1? Part 1 nothing much, but if you start now, you can come up with a good model obviously. Provide a proper table. Then when you see more and more abbreviation or acronyms or whatever, you can just keep adding. document convention also saying, okay, whenever you have any naming convention used within your document, okay, you can also put under the naming convention. And the reference also keep adding the reference when you refer more and more. What do you call that? Books of science. Okay. Okay. Now start the most important part. Okay. The content. This is like introduction. So now we're going to start with the SRS content. Okay. Today I'm going to give you about 4 tasks. Up to you whether you want to. This one I'm not going to check. This one is your final marks. You know, SRS is the main, most important part where you will be given, individual marks and also the group marks at the end of the semester. So this one I'm not going to check. I always check your practical task only, okay, to see your progress. This one is your own effort based on what I explained in the practical task. Okay. So now this one, what you have to do today. For not today now, of course I don't set any due date for this. This is your own planning. How you want to do it. I don't give you so much of pressure. I just make sure that every week you do my practical tasks accordingly. So I will check this. This one you can have your own planning, but I want you to do together with practical tasks. So don't delay so much. Later you will find it very struggling to complete because too much. Okay? Okay. What do you have to do first? Product overview. What is product? What is product for your project now? Which one is the product? Yes, the system that you're going to develop is the product. Very good. Okay, the system that you are developing is the product. So product overview. What can you explain under the product overview? Why are you proposing the objective? Okay, you can give me the objective. Okay, let me give you some draft now. What you can explain. So this is SRS. SRS. Green black. Blue color, black inside. SRS. Okay, so I want you to do the product overview. For the overview, right? Overview. Okay, first of all, the objective of the project. Why you are developing the system of. When you explain the objective, somehow you will explain the the problem and the solution. Sorry. The problem that you are facing, your clients are facing, and also the solution. Then comes your objective. Okay. Then I want you to explain the scope. Scope means what? The modules. What are the modules? Will be developed briefly. No need to be so detailed. It's just overview. Okay. That's all. Okay. Explain this enough. Okay, first objective of the project with the problem and solution description. Then scope, the modules. Okay, that you're going to focus. I notice most of you roughly have identified the modules, right? So you can just go on with that. Okay. Okay. Next functionality, product functionality. So this is what I call 2.1. Now 2.2. So the functionality, right? Detailed features of proposed system. So every module, I want you to list down the features. Module 2, features. In point form. Do you have to follow the functional requirement? Style of writing? No. Here no. Here you are roughly identifying the functions. Roughly listing down the functions. For example, you can just mention like log in, log out. No need to write the system shall allow the user blah blah blah. Not at this stage. Okay, just list down the functions. Okay, register account. Okay, register account. Okay, reset password. Just point form. Reset password. So try to come up with all the functions. Okay, for every module. So now you can see whether it's balanced among your members or not. If let's say one of your members got only 5 functions, the other one got let's say 15 functions. Then try to do something. Of course, you cannot reduce the functions, but you can try to propose another module to combine with the one very simple. Because I worry later your friend got not enough functions. Okay? So try to make it balanced. Now, okay? No need to be exactly the same. More or less okay. But not very imbalanced, which is not good for the 2 members. Okay? Okay, then design and implementation of constraints. Okay? Okay, product functionality structure chart of the module. Then description of the modules. talking about 2.2. 2.2.1 is features. Okay. 2.2.2 now. 2.2.2. It's all about structure chart. A structure chart. This is your system. Okay. Write the name now. Obviously, write the name. Okay. Now I just give you general one. Then here your module 1, the title. Module 1 title. Module 2. Module 2. Module 3. Depends on how many modules you have. Then the features. Same thing, convert into structure chart. Same thing, convert into structure chart. If you have sub module, then break down from it. That is depends on how that is totally depending on how you have identified the modules. Okay, analyze the modules. So now structure chart. Okay, clear? This one listing, this one structure chart. Same thing. Okay, third one. Description of modules. Now briefly explain to me each module, the purpose. So you can give me 2.2.3, module 1, explanation. Module 2, explanation. Why proposing this module? Basically, reason. Why are you proposing this module? Okay. So just explain what module is this and why. What and why. Enough. Okay, what module is this and why you are proposing this module. Enough. How no need. How don't explain now. How to develop the design or whatever not. Just briefly explain what module is this and why are you proposing this module to solve what kind of problems. Okay. Okay, then lastly the most important part, class diagram. Group work. All this are group work. Haven't touched individual part. I will tell you which one is individual part. You can double check at the marking scheme. Marking scheme I will show you clearly which one is individual. Okay? But no worries. When I explain, I will tell you which one is individual. Okay? So now we are going to do the class diagram. So 2.2.4 class diagram. Draw your class diagram. Briefly explain. In explanation, not need to be like so long paragraph. 2 statement enough. 2-3 lines or 2-3 sentences enough. Briefly explain. So the class diagram, you must have all the classes. Okay, all the attributes. How well you analyze, the more you earn, the marks you get. The better the marks will be. Attributes, the operations or methods. Okay, and the relationships. Okay, relationships. Cardinality also. Relationships, I want you to show. Okay, of course, one-to-one, one-to-many, which I just explained yesterday, right? One-to-many, many-to-many. All this, resolve many-to-many. If you have many-to-many, resolve. Okay, don't show me with the many-to-many. Then, identify all the specific relationships. For example, is there any generalization? Of course, association also I want you to make it specific if there is any, such as aggregation or composition. Sorry. Then make sure you put the cardinalities. You know cardinalities I taught you yesterday also. So for example, 1 to 2 or 1 to many or 1 to 1, whatever. So the cardinality I want you to show as well. Optional, mandatory also please show. Okay. So all this in your diagram can get very high marks, obviously. Okay. So that's the last part that you have to do for 2.2. Clear? Again, the relationship. Remember, I got explained generalization, association. Don't force yourself to go and put the aggregation, composition. If there is no aggregation, no composition, then no way for you to put. I'm not going to minus mark. When I see your design, when I see like, oh, there's no way for you to have aggregation, composition, everything is fine, that's it. No worries. Don't force. Okay? If you have, don't forget to identify. Okay? Then generalization obviously will have. You know why generalization, for example, you can improve your design by putting in generalization. You have so many different users, right? Admin, what do you call that? You will have admin sometimes, the admin also got 2 types. You have manager level and then normal admin. So this two you can put as one, okay? What do you call that? Administration user, and then you can have 2 different inherit from the admin user. So something like that. So you have to have generalization somehow, which I find usually would have. The others not compulsory. You have to see whether needed or not. Okay. All the classes have been, have to analyze clearly. All the classes. Don't miss any class. I will compare with your requirement later. So when I see the requirement for some other classes which you didn't show in your, let's say you don't show in your class diagram, then it will affect your marks. Okay. So make sure all the classes tally with what you have written in your requirements. Okay. That's about class diagram. So messy. So sorry. Okay. Because I want to erase first. You want to take down, can take down. Okay, next 2.3. Design and implementation constraint. Who can tell me what is the meaning of constraint? Design and implementation constraint. I have given you an example here. For example, related to your proposed system, for example, processing power. Your system can only work when you have certain level of power. If let's say you are developing a chemical controlling system, or a heat or noise detector in a construction area, IoT systems, for example, then you have a lot of constraints. Your system need to have certain requirement in order to work, in order to operate. That is constraint. Okay. So another word for constraint, anyone? Who can explain constraint to me? Not only this constraint, function constraint. You have a lot of different types of constraint. So I will show you what are the constraints. I have one good reference for you to refer. I will search for you. Okay. Can anyone tell me what is the meaning of constraint? Condition, limitations. Yes. Okay. Okay. For example, time constraint. You know what is time constraint? They give you such a good project, but they give you only 3 months to complete. Don't you think you have no enough time to complete? 3 months, time constraint. Let's say sometimes they come up with such a very interesting project, but with limited budget. Limited budget. So you have to plan everything according to the budget that you have. So you cannot be simply purchasing tools or devices because the budget is very limited. Then this situation is budget constraint. Okay. Then the skill. Skill. Let's say now no one in your team has the knowledge of, what's the latest one? Okay, let's say data science related. Maybe big data, let's say. You have no idea how it works. Your project, there's an aspect where you have to do some data segmentation, or let's say you have to do data mining. Just an example. You have no one in your team got that expertise. So what do you have to do? You don't simply let go the project because of that. Right. You can outsource people to come and do that part for you. Correct one. In that case, knowledge or skill constraint. So a lot of constraints are there. Okay. So when system is being deployed, operations, you what do you call it? Install your system to be for the operation. Okay. So start operating. Then you need certain things, right, to make sure the system works well. If you don't have that setup, that environment, that it's also considered as constraint. Okay. Whatever that you find it like you have to adjust. You cannot really proceed because you don't have enough budget, or you don't have enough resources. All those things can be under constraint. I'll show you one. I think last time one good website explaining example with different category, but I don't know whether still there or not. constraint we can have. Scope, schedule, budget, quality, risk and resources. Okay? Resources means the hardware, software, the tools, all those things are under resources. Budget means the amount that been allocated for the project. Risk means risk constraint. For example, there are possibilities for your project to face certain risks, but there's no way for you to solve the risk or overcome the risk in future or control the risk. That risk constraint. Budget, yeah, okay. Schedule, yes, time limit, and scope. Scope means this one. Okay, they don't want you to go out of the scope. They want you to try to cover within the scope. But you find that if you can extend a bit, you can come up with good system. But the requirement says no. The management says or the client says no. You have to just do within the scope. That's scope constraint. So you can identify any constraint. If you have so many constraints, then I want you to group them accordingly. Like this, which will be good. Okay, now tell me, what is dependency? What is dependency? Dependency? Okay, what is dependency? Student always confused. Constraint is limitations. Kind of like like conditions. Yeah, can. Conditions is overlapping. Okay. Yeah, limitations are better. Constraints are limitations. What is dependency? Dependency class? Dependency? No idea. Can you give me one example of dependency? Can I say task dependency? You have done before, right? Task dependency. Kanchan. Yeah. Let's say you have two teams for this project. Team A, Team B. They start at the same time. But task A has to complete certain amount of work in order to task B to continue. So this task B, even though they have done their job, they cannot proceed because they have to get some output from task A. So this project, this due to, or this can cause what? This can cause what? Delay. You know why? Because even though you have made them parallelly work on their task, but some dependencies between the tasks, so make this group to wait for this group to complete and pass the output so that this can proceed. So somehow delay will happen then. So that's why it comes under dependency, task dependency. Can you give me any other dependency? I don't want task. I already explained task. Any other type of dependency? Sorry? Payment. Order and payment. That is also under task, right? Task dependency. Okay? You are developing your system development activities depending on each other. So you cannot proceed with the next task without completing the previous task, something like that. Now I want some other aspect of the project, dependency. Resource, for example, the hardware. Another group is using the hardware, another project team is using the hardware or the software. You have only one license. You cannot use it now because another project is going on. So you have to wait for the project to complete, then only pass over to you. So certain tasks you can only start after you get the resource. So you have to wait for the resource dependency again. This is resource dependency. Skill, can anyone give me the skill dependency? In your whole entire company, you have only one person skilled in certain language or certain skill. So you want this guy to help with this project, but then he is now on another project. So sometimes you already done, waiting for him to come and continue. But you have to wait because he is assigned to another project. So his skill is needed. So you are waiting for him to complete and then come back and proceed. After he complete that part, only you can proceed with your team again. You understand or not? Skill dependency. A lot of dependency actually. Budget. Budget dependency also can. They release, let's say your client release the amount. 20% every time you complete the project, or every 3 months or something like that. Every 50% of the project, certain amount will be released, or every 10% of the project completion, certain amount released. So now the budget is over, finished. You have completed the budget, you have used up the budget, but then your project is still pending. You still need to proceed some of the tasks. So you have to wait the client to release the next amount. Budget, dependency. A lot of dependency, but not necessarily every project go through all the dependency. It depends on your project title. Okay, so try to identify, analyze some dependencies relevant to your project. Okay, so that's what I want you to do for the part 2. Okay, report SRS. Okay, so assumptions and dependency. Okay, now assumption. Lastly, assumption. Okay, what is assumption? Dependency I already explained. What is assumption? A fact statement such as preposition, okay, enzyme, okay, and also postulate, notion taken for granted. I can give you example. Actually, not exactly the one. There's another side there which is quite good, but I can't remember that. You can Google search. There are a lot of resources. Okay, assumption. Who can give me assumption of projects? What kind of assumption do you make? Anyone? What kind of assumptions you make? As a project manager, when you start your project, you see some unique knowledge or skill needed. But as a project manager, you can assume that your team members, you're not sure, you don't have evidence that your team members have the skill. But you can make assumption that you can complete this project with your members. Assuming that at least 1 or 2 members know how to do it. That is skill assumption. Okay? Any other assumption? Technical assumption, anyone? Resource assumption? You check what do you call that, timetable or whatever. Okay, let's say lab booking. You want to work on a lab, okay, a certain lab for certain software. So you check, you notice there's no project assigned in the lab for that timing. So you haven't done the planning yet. You haven't done your project planning. You don't know when you will be using the lab. But you assume that by the time you need the lab will be available. Assumption again. You understand or not? So no fact, no proof, no evidence. But you make assume. You assume based on your experience or based on your knowledge. There's no evidence. Okay? So you cannot simply say, right, the lab will be available by the time you use, because you are not sure when you will be using. You haven't done your project plan. But you make you make assumption that this lab, okay, will be available when I need it. My project team need it. That's the thing. Okay? So example of assumption. Okay, technical assumptions, risk assumptions, any same categories. You can have a lot of assumptions. Okay? Clear? So also cannot be empty. Again, cannot be empty. You should have a few assumptions relevant to your project. Cannot be empty. And I don't have any limit, any maximum, minimum. I like you to just identify, analyze and identify as many as possible. So no limit again, no limit. Okay? No minimum, no maximum. Okay? But cannot be empty, cannot be null. Remember that. Okay, that's all. This is part 2. Any question? And I also don't give you any due date because I know, you see why I don't give you any due date. This is the reason I don't give you any due date, but don't think you have enough time to be done later. Not good. I seriously tell you, if you want to do this later, you will be rushing and you cannot come up with a quality code. So better start doing now, slowly do. Okay? You see when to do, when to start SRS. The last task in your practical actually. The last task is this one, this report. This is just guideline. You need to write everything in the report, within the report. Report is given to you now. Report is here. Okay, this is what? Assignment 23. Okay, this is the report. Okay, template. There's a template here. This is the template you have to use to do it. And this is guideline how to use the template. Explanation how to put in the information. Then here the practical task. Okay, and the marking footprints. Okay, let me show you. Okay, can you see the yellow color is individual task and not individual? Yeah, individual. UML diagram individual. So 10 marks over here. total 30 marks. Okay, all the diagrams are already seen. Okay, that's all. Any question? So again, you have to complete this document towards the end. So how long do I allocate for that? You can see here SRS. After done the week 9 evaluating alternative option, I will instruct you to start with your SRS. But I don't wait until week 10. I start briefing you here itself. So at least you do little by little. By the time you reach here, your SRS are just nice for you to compile. Put everything together. Okay, and fix it. Any inconsistency among the members. Work. Okay, so you can come up with a good one. Don't wait until week 9. Seriously, got no enough time. Okay, because a lot of diagrams to draw, a lot of writing. Now the SRS is very important. The requirement analysis got 4 pages. You have to make sure you complete the 3 pages. The validation, verification only. Okay. So that's all. Any questions? As far as what attendance? Yeah. Cannot sign attendance.
And also got question.
Question. So that's all for today. So I'm not able to check your technique this week. I will check together with elicitation techniques, interview questions, and also the what question I'll check next week. One shot. Okay. I'll go one by one thing to go through. Okay. Okay, who's absent today?
Yeah, same like yesterday.
Same, one student.